Today marks 1715 day of day lessons, day reflections. And I'm outside in downtown Vancouver. It might be quite loud. If it's too loud, maybe I will not come here. But it's a beautiful place because I'm able to really enjoy the view, enjoy the mountains, enjoy the uh, water. But at the same time, I want to really speak something about it's very important, and I think that the topic of today is that most suffering comes from knowing. Such a beautiful thing. Sometimes we think, okay, knowing is solving, helping, improving, but if you're not ready to really learn what's necessary after you know, that could really put yourself in cage. So today I'll share seven truths that is extremely important to understand that why there's so much suffering and pain coming just from knowing alone. Because I think that when sometimes people who don't know could have joy, bliss, content, fulfillment. But I think that when you really want to really live the most fulfilled, the most blissful life, to achieve that 10 of 10 bliss and fulfillment, you need to have knowing and use it right. Because if you know but you don't use it right, you most likely will be less happy, less joyful than a person who doesn't know whatsoever. So number one is awareness creates a gap between reality and expectation. It's interesting, sometimes we will love something to be a certain way, but it's not. Now, when we know the gap, that could potentially create suffering. Like I thought that I expected that I'm closer to to my goal, to my aspiration. But now when I know that there is a massive gap still, there is a huge gap that needs to be filled, and every single person will need to really make that decision. Should it be encouraged by it and grounded by it because now I'm able to do something about this gap, do something about and execute to really fill the gap. Otherwise, if you do not know the gap, we just do random things, but we know the gap. Now we'll be able to focus on that. But sometimes when we know the gap and the gap is quite big, that could create suffering because it feels daunting because it will require you years of sometimes trade-off sacrifices to really achieve the things that you wanted to achieve. Because growth requires to really close the gap and not escape the reality whatsoever. Number two, knowing removes your favorite excuses. That means that a lot of times we have excuses and relationships, and when we know, that takes away excuses. And it's interesting because sometimes we believe that some kind of fears is holding it back, and it's interesting. Sometimes we say that we blame procrastination, that oh, I'm not starting anything because I'm procrastinating, and most of the time it's not knowing what's actually holding back because actually you're afraid of embarrassment. If you've never been afraid of embarrassment, you would not procrastinate. So a lot of times we use excuse of procrastination, not achieving goals, but in reality, if you know, you know it's your ego is protecting. You don't want to be rejected, you want to be embarrassed, and because of that, you procrastinate. And that's knowing removes that favorite excuse because oh, I just procrastinate. You're not procrastinating. You're afraid to really try and fail, and that's the truth. Number three is the mind suffers from interpretation than facts. It's interesting that people say like, "Oh, I failed." You actually not failed. What happened is that you gave up. It is not failure. Failure is it's giving up, and that's just failure. But sometimes we need to understand that when you really made a mistake, and that theoretically in other people's minds is failing, is really shows that there was something missing in your behavior, in your actions, in your processing, in your knowledge, in your understanding, and now you're able to learn. And a lot of times we we have interpretations of things what really happened, but we know we understand that this is an interpretation and we need to really go back on to doing things and sometimes we don't know want to go back and we tell the stories we failed or we didn't do something. So again, knowing is knowing the facts and really removing those opinions and interpretations. And pain is unavoidable for sure that when you really pursue something and really face the fact that you were not enough for this time, sometimes it could be painful. Number four, knowing without action becomes torture. That means when you think about health, when you think about relationships, when you think about anything, that means that you know that you're in the wrong relationship, but you don't take action. You don't build boundaries. You don't leave the relationship that you potentially are. Maybe you are unhealthy. You know that you're unhealthy. You know that you're supposed to exercise, but you don't do it. You know what you're supposed to do regarding finance, but you don't do it. So you know what needs to be done, but you don't do it. And this again creates a massive, massive prison. So inside without execution becomes a prison. So a person who doesn't know what to do, sometimes it feels better because now he doesn't feel shame because he doesn't do what he knows that he needs to do. Number five is the ego hates truth because truth demands transformation. And again, knowing where you're at, who you are, what needs to be developed, what's a gap, it requires you transform yourself. And it's interesting. Sometimes the ego wants to preserve your current identity, but you know what needs to be changed and who you're supposed to be. That threatens current ego, and we want to protect it. Because when you know what needs to be changed, it requires transformation. So knowing what needs to be done is putting you in a position that you need to say that I'm in limbo. This is my old identity wants one thing, my new identity, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not able to do that yet. And being able to really say, I'm letting go of that old version, and I want to move out of limbo to the version that I want to be. Again, this is a hard truth that a person who is developing that knowing will need to go through. Number six is that more knowledge requires more emotional capacity. It's interesting because I love example of a cup. So that means that when you really start developing your wisdom and understanding, you have a small cup. But I think that wisdom requires increasing your cup, increasing your emotional ability, because the more you understand about other people, the more compassionate you need to become. Because now you see where they're coming from. And I think that it's extremely important to really have developing the knowledge, the wisdom together with emotional awareness. Because if you just have a lot of wisdom, but you don't have emotional capacity to handle that, I think that could lead to authoritarian leadership when a person has authority because they know what to do, but they just don't care about other people. So I think that is extremely important when you develop just to develop emotional awareness, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. Just to really hold that fragile truth because every single person will go through struggles. Because I know that people who go through struggles and persevere and they don't have compassion towards others who are struggling exactly the same thing. There's a lot of times I think that they developed the wisdom, but they didn't develop emotional capacity because that's important. Number seven, the last one is that the highest level is knowing when let it go and then let it go. What it means is that when you know something, you 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 start to kind of believe that you know everything. Oh, I know this one. I will not study anymore, and you lose that edge. You lose that wisdom because things are changing. The context is changing, and we need to adjust and have that curiosity mindset and really say, like, I learn a lot. I know a lot. But at the same time, there's a lot of things to learn, and I think it's a terrible place to be when knowing could lead into terrible situation when you know something and you start to believe that you really know and you stop learning and you don't stop reading because you already believe that you know, but actually you don't. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you're able to. This is what I will see clearly, accept completely, and act courageously, and that's what's beautiful about knowing. And I think, as I said, knowing is a beautiful thing. Knowing is extremely important thing, but at the same time, we need to understand that we need to do something about it. We need to develop understanding how to use our knowing because if we don't use our knowing, that knowing could potentially backfire to us. And that's not a good place to be in. So I hope you choose to win and see you tomorrow.